In a faraway part of the galaxy, a race of beings called the Krylos had spent centuries conquering everything in their path. They were ruthless and efficient, moving from planet to planet like a storm that left nothing but ruin behind. Their ships were massive, bristling with weapons designed to destroy anything that dared to oppose them. Entire civilizations had fallen under their might, their resources stripped away, their people taken as slaves or wiped out entirely. The Krylos were feared across the stars, and no one had ever stood against them for long. At the head of this empire was Varnock, a towering figure whose presence alone could silence a room. His skin was a deep gray, his eyes glowing faintly with an unnatural light. He wore armor adorned with symbols of his victories, each marking another world brought to its knees. Varnock was not just a leader, he was a symbol of power, a force that none could resist. For decades he had led his people in their endless expansion, driven by a belief that the strong deserved to rule and the weak existed only to serve. But on one ordinary day, something unusual happened. A small blip appeared on the scanners of a Krylos patrol ship stationed near the edge of their territory. At first it seemed insignificant, just another piece of debris floating through space. But as the sensors analyzed it further, the readings became clearer. This was no asteroid or derelict vessel. It was a ship, a sleek, advanced craft unlike anything the Krylos had encountered before. Its design was smooth and streamlined, with sharp angles and glowing panels that pulsed softly in the darkness of space. There were no visible markings, no insignia to identify its origin. But one thing was certain: this was no ordinary ship. The news reached Varnock quickly. He stood aboard his flagship, a colossal vessel known as the Ravager, which served as both his command center and a weapon of unimaginable destruction. Around him, his advisors buzzed with excitement and unease. Some suggested it might be a trap, set by a rival faction seeking to challenge the Krylos. Others thought it could be a scout ship sent by a new species foolish enough to test their strength. Whatever it was, Varnock knew it couldn't be ignored. "Send a squadron to investigate," Varnock ordered, his voice low and commanding. "If they resist, destroy them." As the Krylos ships moved toward the mysterious intruder, the human battleship remained still, drifting silently in the void. Inside, Captain Rachel Hayes sat calmly in her chair on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the view screen showing the approaching enemy vessels. She was a woman in her mid-30s with short brown hair and piercing blue eyes that rarely betrayed emotion. Her uniform was simple yet immaculate, reflecting her disciplined nature. Behind her, her crew worked quietly, preparing for whatever came next. Rachel had been chosen to lead this mission because of her reputation for cool-headed decision-making under pressure. She had faced countless challenges during her career, but nothing quite like this. The ship she commanded was experimental, built using technology salvaged from ancient ruins discovered on Earth's moon. No one fully understood how it worked, but it was faster, stronger, and more advanced than anything humanity had ever created. Still, Rachel knew that even the best technology wouldn't guarantee success against an enemy as formidable as the Krylos. Beside her stood Lieutenant Daniel Brooks, a man in his late 20s with sharp features and a quick mind. He was responsible for tactical operations, analyzing every move the enemy made and planning countermeasures. Across the room, Dr. Emily Carter monitored data streaming in about the Krylos ships. She was a scientist first and foremost, fascinated by the biology and behavior of alien species. Her insights often proved invaluable during missions like this. Finally, there was Chief Engineer Paul Miller, a grizzled veteran with a knack for solving problems others deemed impossible. He kept the ship running smoothly, ensuring that every system functioned perfectly when it mattered most. When the Krylos ships arrived, they wasted no time. A harsh voice crackled over the comms, demanding identification and purpose. Rachel leaned forward slightly, pressing a button to activate the communication system. "This is Captain Rachel Hayes of the human battleship Endeavor," she said, her tone steady and clear. "We come in peace and seek only to establish dialogue." The response was immediate and dismissive. The Krylos laughed, mocking the very idea of peaceful intentions. To them, weakness was unacceptable, and anyone who claimed to want peace was either lying or unworthy of respect. Without warning, they fired a series of warning shots, sending bursts of energy streaking past the Endeavor. The bridge crew flinched, but Rachel remained unfazed. She had expected hostility and was ready for it. Evasive maneuvers, she instructed calmly. Do not return fire unless absolutely necessary. Daniel sprang into action, guiding the ship through a series of complex movements that left the Krylos pilot struggling to keep up. The Endeavor darted and weaved, its superior speed and agility making it nearly impossible to hit. Meanwhile, Paul monitored the ship's systems, ensuring that the stress of rapid maneuvering didn't cause any critical failures. Emily watched the exchange with fascination, noting how the Krylos relied on brute force rather than strategy. Varnock observed the scene from his flagship, growing increasingly irritated. He had expected the humans to crumble under the slightest pressure, but instead, they danced around his forces with ease. It was infuriating and intriguing. Who were these newcomers? Where had they come from? And why did they possess technology so far beyond what he had seen from other species? Back aboard the Endeavor, Rachel addressed her crew. They're testing us, she said. We need to show them we're not afraid, but we also can't provoke them unnecessarily. Stay focused. Her words had the desired effect. The crew worked together seamlessly, each member playing their part without hesitation. Even as the Krylos intensified their attacks, the Endeavor continued to evade, proving itself more than a match for the enemy fleet. Slowly but surely, cracks began to form in the Krylos' confidence. They had never faced an opponent like this before, and it showed. Finally, after what felt like hours, the Krylos withdrew, retreating to regroup and reassess. Rachel allowed herself a brief moment of relief, though she knew the battle was far from over. The Krylos wouldn't give up easily, and she needed to prepare her crew for whatever came next. As the Endeavor drifted silently in the vastness of space, Rachel gazed out at the stars. She couldn't help but wonder what the future held. Not just for her crew, but for humanity as a whole. They had taken a bold step into the unknown, challenging a force that had dominated the galaxy for centuries. Whether they succeeded or failed, one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. The Krylos fleet retreated, but only temporarily. Varnock was not a leader who accepted setbacks lightly. In the command center of his flagship, the Ravager, he paced back and forth, his glowing eyes narrowed in thought. His advisors whispered, among themselves, their voices tinged with unease. None of them had ever seen an enemy like this before. The human ship's movements were too precise, its technology too advanced. It didn't fit the pattern of any species they had encountered in their long history of conquest. This is unacceptable, Varnock growled, his deep voice reverberating through the chamber. We are the Krylos. We do not retreat. We do not falter. His second-in-command, a wiry alien named Zorak, stepped forward cautiously. Commander, perhaps we should gather more information before engaging again. Their ship, its capabilities, are beyond anything in our records. Varnock turned sharply, fixing Zorak with a glare that made the smaller alien shrink back. Are you suggesting we show fear? Hesitation? He took a step closer, his towering frame casting a shadow over Zorak. No. Fear is for the weak. The humans will learn what happens when they cross the Krylos. Zorak bowed his head quickly, avoiding further confrontation. As you command, Commander, Varnock issued new orders. A smaller scout ship would approach the human vessel under the guise of diplomacy. If the humans truly wanted peace, as they claimed, they would welcome the gesture. If not, the scout ship would provide valuable intelligence about their weapons and defenses. Either way, the Krylos would gain the upper hand. On board the Endeavor, Captain Rachel Hayes and her crew monitored the situation closely. The Krylos ships had withdrawn, but no one believed it was a sign of surrender. Rachel knew they were planning something, and she was determined to stay one step ahead. They're sending a smaller ship, Lieutenant Daniel Brooks announced from his station. Looks like a scout. Rachel nodded, her expression calm but focused. Prepare for contact. Let's see what they want. Dr. Emily Carter leaned over her console, analyzing data streaming in about the approaching vessel. Their communication signals are encrypted, but I'm picking up traces of hostility. They're not here to negotiate. Chief Engineer Paul. Miller grunted from where he stood near the engineering panel. Figures. These guys don't strike me as the chatty type. Rachel ignored the comment, keeping her attention on the view screen. The Krylo scout ship drew closer, its jagged design contrasting sharply with the sleek lines of the Endeavor. When it finally came within range, a harsh voice crackled over the comms. You claim to seek peace, the Krylos pilot sneered. Prove. It power down your weapons and allow us to board. Rachel exchanged a glance with Daniel, who shook his head slightly. The request was clearly a trap, but refusing outright would escalate tensions further. She pressed the comm button, her tone measured and firm. We have no intention of harming you, she replied. But we cannot comply with such demands. Our mission is peaceful, and we ask the same courtesy from you, the Krylos pilot scoffed. You dare to dictate terms? You are nothing but insects compared to us. Before Rachel could respond, the scout ship fired a warning shot, narrowly missing the Endeavor. The bridge crew tensed, but Rachel remained composed. Return fire if necessary, but avoid direct conflict, she instructed. Let's see how far they're willing to push this. Daniel guided the Endeavor into a series of evasive maneuvers, dodging the scout ship's attacks with ESO. The Krylos pilot grew increasingly frustrated, firing more aggressively as the human ship slipped away time and again. Emily monitored the energy signatures of their weapons, noting patterns and weaknesses. They're relying on brute force, she said aloud. Their targeting systems are slow to adapt to our movements. If we can exploit that, not yet, Rachel interrupted gently. We need to understand them better first. Patience. Paul chimed in from his station. Patience is great and all, but if they keep shooting at us, we're going to run out of space to dodge eventually. Rachel acknowledged his point with a slight nod. Understood, but we hold our ground until we know more. The standoff continued, with the Krylos scout ship growing more reckless by the minute. Finally, after several minutes of fruitless attempts to hit the Endeavor, the pilot broke off the attack and retreated. The view screen showed the scout ship rejoining the main fleet, which had regrouped at a safe distance. Well, that was fun, Paul muttered sarcastically. Anyone else feel like we just passed some kind of test? Rachel allowed herself a faint smile. Maybe, or maybe they're just buying time to plan their next move. Emily turned away from her console, her brow furrowed in thought. I've been analyzing their behavior. They're aggressive, yes, but there's something else, a sense of pride, almost arrogance. They don't expect resistance, especially not from someone like us. Daniel nodded. Which means we might have an advantage. If we can keep surprising them, we might be able to turn this around. Rachel considered their words carefully. Her crew was skilled and resourceful, but they were still outnumbered and operating in unfamiliar territory. The Krylos fleet loomed large on the view screen, a reminder of the challenge ahead. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that they had already planted a seed of doubt in the enemy's mind. Keep monitoring their movements, Rachel instructed, and prepare for anything. They'll be back, and next time, they won't. Hold back. Back aboard the Ravager, Varnock listened to the scout ship's report with mounting frustration. The humans had evaded every attack, countering with maneuvers that suggested a level of sophistication he hadn't anticipated. Worse, their refusal to retaliate hinted at either confidence or arrogance, or both. They play games with us, Varnock snarled, slamming a fist against the armrest of his chair. They think they can humiliate the Krylos and walk away unscathed. Zorak hesitated before speaking. Commander, perhaps we underestimated them. Their ship, it moves unlike anything we've seen, and their tactics... Enough, Varnock barked, cutting him off. The Krylos do not underestimate anyone. We adapt, we conquer, and we destroy those who stand in our way. He rose from his seat, his towering form radiating authority. Prepare the fleet for full engagement. This ends now. The humans will learn the price of defiance. Zorak bowed deeply, though his expression betrayed a flicker of doubt. As the Ravager's engines roared to life, the entire Krylos fleet began to mobilize, forming a massive formation that stretched across the void of space. Thousands of ships, each bristling with weapons, moved in unison toward the lone human vessel. Aboard the Endeavor, alarms blared as sensors detected the incoming wave of Krylos ships. The crew sprang into action, their earlier calm replaced by urgency. Rachel stood at the center of the bridge, her gaze fixed on the view screen as the enemy fleet filled the horizon. "They're coming in force," Daniel reported grimly. "Hundreds of ships, maybe more." Paul glanced up from his console. "Our shields can take a beating, but there's no way we can hold off that many." Rachel nodded, her mind racing. "We don't have to hold them off. We just have to survive, long enough to find a weakness." Emily spoke up, her voice steady despite the tension. "Their reliance on brute force could be our opening. If we can disrupt their coordination—" "Do it," Rachel ordered without hesitation. "Whatever you need, make it happen." The crew worked feverishly, preparing for the battle that was sure to come. Weapon systems were brought online, defensive measures activated, and every available resource redirected to ensure the ship's survival. As the Krylos fleet closed in, the Endeavor's engines hummed with power, ready to meet the storm head-on. Rachel took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. She had known from the start that this mission would be dangerous, but she hadn't expected the stakes to rise so quickly. Still, she refused to let fear dictate her actions. Humanity's future depended on what happened next, and she wasn't about to let it slip away. "Stay sharp," she told her crew. "This is where we prove ourselves." The first volley of enemy fire streaked through space, signaling the beginning of the fight. For the first time since encountering the Krylos, Rachel felt a spark of hope. They had faced impossible odds before, and they had prevailed. Whatever happened next, she trusted her crew to give it everything they had. The Endeavor surged forward, meeting the Krylos fleet with determination and resolve. The galaxy held its breath as two vastly different forces clashed in a battle that would shape the course of history. The battle began with a deafening roar as the Krylos fleet unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, lighting up the void of space like a storm of fire. The Endeavor's shields shimmered under the assault, absorbing the impact with a faint hum that resonated through the ship. On the bridge, Captain Rachel Hayes stood firm, her hands gripping the railing as she watched the chaos unfold on the view screen. "They're focusing their fire on our forward section," Lieutenant Daniel Brooks reported, his fingers flying over the tactical console. "Shields are holding at 70%, but they won't last forever." Chief Engineer Paul Miller nodded grimly from his station. "We've got backup systems online, but if they keep hitting us like this, we'll lose power to the engines. Eventually." Rachel didn't respond immediately. Her eyes were fixed on the swirling mass of enemy ships surrounding them. The Krylos fleet was massive, overwhelming in both size and numbers. Each vessel bristled with weapons, firing relentlessly in an attempt to overwhelm the human ship. Yet despite the odds, the Endeavor continued to evade, its advanced systems allowing it to slip through gaps in the enemy formation with ease. "Keep moving," Rachel ordered calmly. "Don't let them pin us down." Daniel adjusted the ship's trajectory, guiding it into a series of sharp turns and sudden bursts of speed. The Krylos pilots struggled to keep up, their slower, bulkier ships unable to match the agility of the Endeavor. But even as the human ship danced through the storm of plasma fire, Rachel knew they couldn't keep this up indefinitely. Sooner or later, the Krylos would find a way to corner them. Dr. Emily Carter monitored the situation from her station, analyzing data streaming in about the enemy fleet. She noticed patterns in their movements, subtle cues that hinted at coordination, or lack thereof. "Their attacks are uncoordinated," she said aloud. "They're relying on sheer numbers rather than strategy. If we can disrupt their communication systems, we might be able to break their formation." Rachel turned to her, intrigued. "How?" Emily hesitated for a moment before answering. "We could use an electromagnetic pulse. It would temporarily disable their systems, giving us time to reposition and strike back." Paul frowned, scratching his head. "An EMP would take out our own systems too. We'd be sitting ducks until everything rebooted." "We don't have a choice," Rachel said firmly. If we don't do something soon, we'll be overwhelmed anyway. Prepare the EMP and target their command ships. Once it's deployed, get us clear of their range." The crew sprang into action. Paul worked quickly to reroute power to the EMP generator, while Daniel plotted a course that would maximize the weapon's effectiveness. Emily monitored the enemy fleet, identifying key targets whose destruction would cause the most disruption. "Ready when you are, Captain," Daniel announced after a few tense minutes. Rachel took a deep breath, then gave the order. "Deploy the EMP." A blinding flash erupted from the Endeavor, sending waves of electromagnetic energy rippling through space. The Krylos ships nearest to the blast immediately faltered, their systems shutting down as the pulse swept through their ranks. Lights flickered, engines sputtered, and communications went silent. For a brief moment, the battlefield fell eerily. "Quiet. Move us out of range," Rachel commanded. Daniel guided the Endeavor away from the disabled ships, putting as much distance between them and the recovering Krylos fleet as possible. Meanwhile, Paul worked furiously to restore the Endeavor's systems, which had been affected by the EMP as well. "Shields are back online," he reported. "Engines are sluggish, but functional. Give me a minute to recalibrate." As the Endeavor limped to safety, the Krylos fleet began to recover. Their ships slowly came back online, their pilots regrouping under Varnak's furious orders. Back aboard the Ravager, the Krylos commander paced angrily, his glowing eyes burning with rage. "How could this happen?" he demanded, his voice shaking with barely contained fury. "How could a single ship, a primitive human vessel, outwit us?" Zorak cowered slightly under his leader's wrath. "Commander, their technology, it's unlike anything we've encountered. Perhaps—" "Silence!" Varnak barked, cutting him off. "I will not tolerate excuses. Regroup the fleet. Focus all firepower on the human ship. I want it destroyed now." The Krylos ships surged forward once again, their weapons blazing. This time, however, their movements were less coordinated, their earlier confidence shaken by the unexpected setback. The Endeavor, though damaged, remained steadfast, weaving through the renewed assault with precision. On board the human battleship, the crew worked tirelessly to stay ahead of the enemy. Rachel kept her focus sharp, issuing commands with unwavering clarity. "Target their lead ships," she instructed. "Take out their front lines and force them to scatter." Daniel complied, launching a series of counterattacks that struck at the heart of the Krylos formation. The Endeavor's weapon systems, though experimental, proved devastatingly effective, tearing through the enemy vessels with ease. Explosions lit up the darkness as Krylos ships were obliterated one by one. "They're breaking apart," Emily exclaimed, watching as the enemy fleet began to fragment under the relentless assault. "Their morale is crumbling." Rachel allowed herself a small smile. "Good. Keep pressing the advantage." But even as the tide began to turn, the Endeavor's crew faced new challenges. The strain of constant combat was taking its toll on the ship's systems. Alarms blared as critical components threatened to fail, forcing Paul to prioritize repairs while simultaneously fending off further damage. "We're losing shield integrity in sections 3 and 4, he warned, sweat beading on his forehead. "If they hit us there again, we're done for." Rachel clenched her jaw, her mind racing. They had pushed the Krylos to the brink, but the cost was mounting. Every second brought them closer to victory, but also closer to defeat. Then, unexpectedly, a transmission crackled over the comms. It was faint, almost drowned out by static, but recognizable nonetheless. A voice, one that sounded distinctly human, spoke urgently. "Endeavor, this is Admiral Grant of the Sol Defense Fleet. Do you copy?" Rachel froze, her heart pounding. The message repeated, louder this time. "Endeavor, respond. Reinforcements are en route." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Rachel stepped forward, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "This is Captain Hayes of the Endeavor. We read you, Admiral. What reinforcements?" "A squadron of Federation cruisers intercepted your distress signal," the Admiral replied. "They're approximately 10 minutes away. Hold your position until they arrive." Relief washed over the bridge crew, but Rachel knew they couldn't afford to let their guard down. 10 minutes felt like an eternity in the heat of battle. Still, the knowledge that help was coming bolstered their resolve. "Everyone, stay focused," Rachel urged. "We've come this far. Let's make sure." We're still standing when reinforcements arrive. The next 10 minutes felt like hours. The Krylos fleet, sensing desperation, redoubled their efforts, throwing everything they had at the beleaguered human ship. But the Endeavor held firm, its crew fighting with every ounce of strength they had left. Finally, just as the ship's shields were on the verge of collapse, a new wave of vessels appeared on the horizon. Federation cruisers, sleek and powerful, emerged from hyperspace, their weapons already trained on the Krylos fleet. The tide of the battle shifted instantly as the newcomers joined the fray, unleashing a devastating barrage that forced the Krylos to retreat. Varnock, witnessing the arrival of the reinforcements, realized the futility of continuing the fight. With a snarl of frustration, he issued the order to withdraw. The Krylos fleet disengaged, retreating into the depths of space as quickly as they had arrived. On board the Endeavor, the crew erupted into cheers, their exhaustion momentarily forgotten. Rachel allowed herself a rare moment of relief, leaning against the railing as she watched the Krylos disappear from view. They had done it. They had survived against impossible odds. But as the adrenaline faded and reality set in, Rachel couldn't shake the weight of what had happened. The Krylos had been defeated, but only temporarily. They would return stronger and more determined than ever, and when they did, humanity would need to be ready. "Damage report," she said quietly, turning back to her crew. "Let's assess the situation and prepare for whatever comes next." The Endeavor drifted silently in the aftermath of the battle, its battered hull a testament to the courage and resilience of those aboard. The galaxy had changed forever, and Rachel knew that her journey was far from over. The arrival of the Federation cruisers marked a turning point in the battle, but it did not mean the fight was over. The Krylos fleet, though retreating, still posed a significant threat. Their ships were battered and disorganized, but their sheer numbers made them dangerous even in retreat. Varnock, aboard his flagship Ravager, refused to admit defeat. His pride burned hotter than ever, fueling his determination to regroup and strike back. "Commander, we must withdraw fully," Zorak urged, his voice trembling with urgency. "Our losses are unsustainable. If we stay any longer, we risk total annihilation." Varnock's eyes narrowed as he glared at his second-in-command. "We do not run from insects," he growled. "Not now, not ever. Prepare the remaining ships for a counterattack. We will show these humans what true power looks like." Zorak hesitated, knowing better than to argue further. He relayed the orders to the fleet, though many of the Krylos captains shared his doubts. Morale among the crews was low, shaken by the unexpected resistance they had faced. For centuries, the Krylos had dominated the galaxy without challenge, and now, for the first time, they found themselves questioning their own invincibility. Aboard the Endeavor, Captain Rachel Hayes watched as the Federation cruisers moved into formation around her ship. The reinforcements had arrived just in time, their presence forcing the Krylos to retreat. But Rachel knew that this victory was fragile. The Krylos were not a species to accept defeat easily, and she suspected that Varnock would return with renewed aggression. "Status report," Rachel ordered, her tone calm but firm. Lieutenant Daniel Brooks glanced up from his console. "Shields are down to 20%. Hull integrity is compromised in multiple sections. Engineering teams are working on repairs, but it'll take hours to get us fully operational again." Chief Engineer Paul Miller chimed in, wiping sweat from his brow. "Engines are stable for now, but we've got major damage to the reactor core. Another hit like that EMP and we're done for." Rachel nodded, absorbing the information. "Understood. Prioritize critical systems. We need to be ready if the Krylos decide to come back." Dr. Emily Carter, who had been monitoring the enemy fleet's movements, spoke up. "They're regrouping near the edge of sensor range. It looks like they're planning something. Their ships are forming a tight formation, which suggests they're preparing for a concentrated attack." Rachel frowned, considering the implications. "They're desperate," she said. Desperation makes them unpredictable. Stay alert. The bridge crew worked tirelessly, each member focused on their task. Despite the exhaustion etched on their faces, there was a sense of quiet determination in the air. They had faced overwhelming odds and survived. Now they were determined to finish what they had started. As the minutes passed, tension mounted. The Krylos fleet remained distant, its movements cautious but deliberate. Then, suddenly, their ships surged forward, accelerating toward the human forces with terrifying speed. "They're coming in fast," Daniel shouted, his hands flying over the controls. "Targeting the lead cruiser." Rachel clenched her fists, her mind racing. "Hold position. Let them come to us." The Federation cruisers formed a defensive perimeter around the Endeavor, their weapons trained on the approaching Krylos ships. As the enemy fleet entered firing range, the humans opened fire, unleashing a barrage of energy blasts that lit up the void of space. Explosions erupted among the Krylos ranks, sending debris spiraling into the darkness. But the Krylos pressed on, undeterred by their losses. Their ships rammed through the human lines, sacrificing themselves to create openings for others to exploit. One by one, the Federation cruisers took heavy damage, their shields faltering under the relentless assault. "They're targeting the cruisers to isolate us," Emily observed, her voice tight with concern. "If they succeed, we'll be surrounded." Rachel's jaw tightened. "We can't let that happen. Lieutenant, focus all firepower on their command ships. Take out their leadership, and the rest will fall apart." Daniel complied, redirecting the Endeavor's weapons to target the largest Krylos vessels. The human battleship's advanced systems allowed it to deliver precise strikes, crippling several key ships in quick succession. But the cost was high. With each shot fired, the Endeavor's already weakened systems groaned under the strain. "Reactor temperature is rising," Paul warned. "We're pushing the engines too hard. If we don't ease off, we'll overload the core." Rachel hesitated, weighing the risks. "Keep pushing. We can't afford to slow down now." The battle raged on, both sides locked in, a deadly dance of destruction. The Krylos fleet, though diminished, continued to fight with ferocity born of desperation. Varnock himself led the charge, piloting the Ravager directly into the heart of the human formation. The massive flagship unleashed a devastating salvo, obliterating one of the Federation cruisers in a single blast. "Captain, we've lost Delta Wing," Daniel reported, his voice strained. "They're breaking through our lines." Rachel's heart sank, but she forced herself to remain composed. "Admiral Grant, request immediate support from your remaining ships. We need to hold them off." The Admiral's voice crackled over the comms. "We're doing everything we can, Captain, but our forces are stretched thin. You'll need to buy us time." Rachel turned to her crew, her expression resolute. "You heard him. Everyone, give it everything you've got. This is where we make our stand." The Endeavor surged forward, positioning itself between the Krylos fleet and the remaining Federation cruisers. Its weapons blazed, tearing through enemy ships with unrelenting fury. Chief Miller worked miracles in engineering, rerouting power, and stabilizing failing systems even as alarms screamed throughout the ship. Dr. Carter provided real-time analysis of the battlefield, identifying weak points in the Krylos formation and guiding the crew's attacks. For a moment, it seemed as though the tide might turn decisively in favor of the humans. The Krylos fleet was visibly struggling, its numbers dwindling with each passing second. But then, disaster struck. A stray plasma bolt struck the Endeavor's portside engine, causing a catastrophic failure. The ship lurched violently, throwing the crew off balance. "We've lost primary propulsion," Paul shouted, scrambling to contain the damage. "Back up. Thrusters are offline. We're dead in the water." Rachel gripped the railing tightly, her knuckles white. Without propulsion, the Endeavor was vulnerable, an easy target for the Krylos. She turned to Daniel, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "Can we restore partial thrust?" "I'm trying," Daniel replied, his fingers moving furiously over the controls. "But it's going to take time they didn't have." The Ravager loomed large on the view screen, its massive cannons charging for another devastating strike. Varnok's voice echoed over the comms, filled with triumph. You thought you could stand against the Krylos? You were wrong. Your defiance ends here. Rachel refused to give in to despair. She activated the comm system, addressing the entire fleet. This isn't over. Every ship, every crew member, give it everything you've got. Show them what humanity is made of. Her words ignited a spark of determination across the human forces. The Federation cruisers rallied, launching a coordinated assault that caught the Krylos off guard. Explosions rippled through the enemy fleet as the humans fought back with renewed vigor. Meanwhile, aboard the Endeavour, Chief Miller achieved a breakthrough. I've rerouted auxiliary power to the engines. We've got partial thrust back online. Rachel wasted no time. Get us out of the line of fire, then bring us around for another pass. The Endeavour shuddered as its engines roared to life, propelling it away from the Ravager's deadly aim. Once clear, Rachel ordered Daniel to guide the ship into a flanking position behind the Krylos flagship. With a final burst of speed, the Endeavour unleashed a concentrated volley of fire, striking the Ravager's weakened shields and breaching its hull. The massive ship staggered, its systems failing under the onslaught. Varnok bellowed in rage, his dreams of conquest crumbling around him. No, this cannot be. But it was too late. The Ravager exploded in a brilliant flash of light, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. Without their leader, the remaining Krylos ships began to scatter, fleeing into the depths of space. Silence fell over the bridge of the Endeavour as the crew watched the remnants of the Krylos fleet disappear. Exhaustion and relief washed over them, mingling with a profound sense of accomplishment. They had faced an impossible foe and emerged victorious. Rachel leaned against the railing, letting out a long breath. Damage report, she said softly. Paul rubbed his temples, looking drained but satisfied. We're holding together, barely. Repairs will take weeks, maybe months, but we're alive. That's what matters. Emily smiled faintly. And we proved something today. Humanity isn't just a footnote in the galaxy anymore, we're players now. Rachel nodded, her gaze fixed on the stars outside the view screen. Yes, but this is only the beginning. The Krylos may be gone for now, but others will follow. We need to be ready. As the Endeavour limped toward safety, escorted by the surviving Federation cruisers, Rachel felt a mix of pride and resolve. They had taken a stand against tyranny and won. But she knew that the galaxy was vast, full of challenges yet unseen. Whatever came next, she and her crew would face it together. The aftermath of the battle left the Endeavour and its crew battered but alive. Smoke lingered in the corridors, and the hum of emergency systems filled the air as repair teams worked tirelessly to patch up the ship. Captain Rachel Hayes stood on the bridge, her uniform smudged with soot, her expression calm despite the chaos around her. The view screen showed the remnants of the Krylos fleet retreating into the void, their once mighty armada reduced to scattered ships fleeing for safety. They're gone, Lieutenant Daniel Brooks said quietly, breaking the silence that had settled over the bridge. His voice carried a mix of exhaustion and disbelief. We did it. Rachel nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the empty expanse of space where the Ravager had exploded. Varnok's death marked the end of an era for the Krylos, but she knew better than to think this was truly the end. The galaxy was vast, and power vacuums often bred new threats. Still, for now, they had won, a victory that would echo across the stars. Let's not celebrate too soon, she said firmly, turning to face her crew. We've got work to do. Assess the damage, check on the injured, and prepare a full report for Admiral Grant. Humanity needs to know what happened here. Chief Engineer Paul Miller wiped his hands on a rag as he approached. Captain, the reactor core is stable, for now, but we're running on borrowed time. We need dry dock repairs and soon. Another fight like that and we'll be space dust. Dr. Emily Carter added her voice to the conversation, her tone measured but urgent. Casualty reports are coming in. Most of the injuries are minor, but some of the engineering crew took heavy radiation exposure during the engine failure. They'll need medical attention beyond what we can provide on board. Rachel absorbed the information without hesitation. Prioritize the injured. Divert whatever resources we have left to treat them. And get me a status update on the Federation cruisers. How many survived? Daniel checked his console. 3 out of 5 cruisers are still operational, though all sustained significant damage. Admiral Grant is requesting coordinates for a rendezvous point where we can regroup and assess next steps. Rachel gave a curt nod. Send them our position. We'll hold steady until they arrive. In the meantime, let's focus on securing the ship. As the hours passed, the Endeavour became a hive of activity. Crew members moved through the corridors carrying tools and supplies, their faces etched with fatigue but also determination. The sense of camaraderie was palpable. Every person aboard knew they had accomplished something extraordinary. Stories of bravery spread quickly. How Chief Miller had risked his life to stabilize the reactor core. How Daniel had maneuvered the ship with precision under fire. How Emily had identified critical weaknesses in the Krylos fleet that turned the tide of battle. Rachel made her rounds, checking on her crew and offering words of encouragement. She stopped by the medical bay where Dr. Carter oversaw treatment for the injured. The room was crowded with makeshift beds lining the walls and medics rushing between patients. Despite the grim scene, there was a sense of hope in the air. "You've done good work," Rachel told Emily, placing a hand on her shoulder. "How are you holding up?" Emily managed a small smile, though her eyes betrayed her exhaustion. "I've been better, Captain, but I'll survive. So will the rest of us. That's what matters." Rachel nodded. "Take care of yourself too, Doctor. We need you at your best." Leaving the medical bay, Rachel climbed the stairs to the observation deck, a quiet space near the rear of the ship. She stepped outside, letting the cool air wash over her as she gazed out at the stars. The galaxy stretched endlessly before her, vast and unknowable, filled with wonders and dangers alike. For centuries, humanity had looked to the stars with wonder and longing. Now they were part of it, a player in a cosmic game far larger than anyone had imagined. Her thoughts drifted to Earth, to the billions of people who had no idea what had transpired here today. Would they see the Endeavor's victory as a triumph or a warning? Would they rise to meet the challenges ahead, or would fear paralyze them? "Captain?" A voice called softly behind her. Rachel turned to see Daniel standing in the doorway, his hands clasped behind his back. "Lieutenant, what is it?" He hesitated, then stepped closer. "I wanted to ask, what happens now? The Krylos may be gone, but others will come. Are we ready for that?" Rachel sighed, leaning against the railing. "No one is ever truly ready, Daniel. But readiness isn't about being fearless. It's about facing fear and doing what needs to be done anyway. Today we proved that humanity has the strength to stand against tyranny. That's a start." Daniel nodded slowly, his brow furrowed, in thought. "Do you think we'll see more battles like this, more enemies like the Krylos?" "I don't know," Rachel admitted. "But I do know this. Humanity doesn't get to choose whether we face these challenges. All we can control is how we respond. And today, we responded well." Hours later, the surviving Federation cruisers arrived at the designated rendezvous point. Admiral Grant hailed the Endeavour, his face appearing on the view screen. He looked weary but proud, his eyes scanning the bridge as if taking stock of the crew's condition. "Captain Hayes, you've done humanity proud," he said, his voice carrying both gratitude and authority. "Your actions today have sent a message to the galaxy. Humanity will not be bullied or ignored. You've earned your place among the stars." Rachel inclined her head slightly. "Thank you, Admiral. But this isn't just my victory. It belongs to everyone aboard this ship and the Federation fleet. Without their courage and sacrifice, none of this would have been possible." Grant nodded. "Well said, Captain. Now let's talk about next steps. The Krylos may be broken, but their empire spans dozens of star systems. We need to decide how to handle the aftermath and prepare for whoever comes next." Rachel straightened, her expression firm. "Understood, but first we secure the Endeavour and tend to our wounded. Then we plan for the future." The Admiral gave a rare smile. "Agreed. You've earned some rest, Captain. Take it while you can." As the days passed, The Endeavour limped toward a nearby starbase for repairs. Along the way, stories of the battle spread, reaching Earth and beyond. News outlets hailed the crew as heroes, their names becoming symbols of hope and resilience. Rachel watched the coverage from her quarters, feeling a mix of pride and unease. Fame was fleeting, and the galaxy was unpredictable. She knew that. True leadership meant staying grounded, even when the world celebrated your victories. On the final day of their journey, Rachel gathered her senior officers in the briefing room. The mood was somber yet hopeful, a reflection of everything they had endured. "We've taken a big step forward," Rachel began, her voice steady. "But the road ahead is long. There will be more battles, more challenges. Our job is to be ready for them, not because we seek conflict, but because we refuse to back down." Paul raised a hand, his usual gruff demeanor softened by respect. "So what's next, Captain? Do we keep pushing deeper into the galaxy? Or do we fortify what we've got?" Rachel considered the question carefully. "Both. We expand cautiously, always mindful of the risks, but we also protect what we've fought for. Humanity's future depends on balance, strength and wisdom, courage and restraint." Emily spoke up, her voice thoughtful. "And what about the Krylos? Their empire isn't gone, just fractured. Someone will rise to take Varnok's place." Rachel nodded. "That's why we stay vigilant. Knowledge is our greatest weapon. We learn, adapt, and grow stronger. If we do that, we'll be ready for whatever comes next." The meeting ended with a sense of purpose renewed. As the Endeavour docked at the starbase, Rachel stood on the bridge one last time before disembarking. She looked out at the bustling station, its lights twinkling like stars against the darkness of space. Humanity had taken its first real step into the galactic stage, and the Endeavour had led the way. The journey ahead would be fraught with uncertainty, but Rachel felt confident that they could face it together. After all, the stars were calling, and humanity had answered. With that thought, she stepped off the ship, ready to write the next chapter of humanity's story among the stars.